At the June 17th demonstration in Moncton, guest speakers from other provinces addressed the crowds, and another meeting took place with the Maritime Atlantic Coalition. On August 7th, a meeting was held with the Maritime Atlantic Coalitions to discuss matters of concerns under the Charter of Rights and how Bill 73 violates it. The 34th New Brunswick Federation of Labor Convention dealt with Bill 73 with guest speakers from the coalition and a resolution to carry the fight into the election being unanimously passed. Individual locals, both public and private, sponsored ads on every radio station in New Brunswick. A private survey company found 71% of every citizen in the province heard and agreed with the ad contents. The coalition has placed ads on commercial billboards. As you can see, they are very striking. The Moncton bus drivers are making a public statement on their buses. In addition, lawn signs are being erected on private lawns, which is being coordinated through the Labour Councils and Coalition. The signs are so effective that a big Liberal in Quispamsis got so upset when he saw a sign on a nurse's lawn that he forced the town clerk to send her a letter demanding the sign be taken down.
Hi, my name is Heather Kane. I'm a member of the New Brunswick Nurses Union and I work in a nursing home in St. John. I have recently placed a sign on my front lawn expressing my displeasure with the McKenna government. Last week I received this letter from the town in which I live. They've asked me to take the sign down. I believe this infringes on my freedom of expression as stated in the Charter of Rights. It seems that the Liberal government thinks they can control everything.
The Liberal Party in Bill 73 thinks it's beyond the law, the courts, freedom of association, and now can deny freedom of expression. Democracy is certainly not alive in New Brunswick. One man thinks he is king of New Brunswick, not premier. Individual MLAs say they do not agree with dishonoring signed contracts, but they could not go against King Frank and the Liberal Party. At a nomination convention in Apohawk, Premier McKenna stated, quote, "I froze their wages because it's the right thing to do," unquote. Well, the jury is now in, and the majority of people do not support breaking signed contracts. New Brunswickers do not support a person who breaks their word. As you will hear, the Premier condemned Jackie Vautour July 18th concerning an agreement that the Premier felt was not being lived up to.
Vautour has broken a promise to leave Kushabugwak Park. Vautour led a group which blockaded part of the park earlier this week, the group calling for a royal commission into the expropriation of land 20 years ago. Premier McKenna says Vautour agreed to leave the park after receiving $250,000 and land from the province in 1987.
Well, your word's your word, whether you give it through verbally or whether you give it in writing. He said that he was going to leave. He got the big chunk of money, and he hasn't left.
That's right. The Premier said, quote, "Your word is your word whether you give it verbally or in writing," unquote. Can you believe this? The same Premier who gave his word by signing legal contracts with his own employees passed Bill 73, breaking his word and the contracts. On June 1st, at a champagne breakfast, King Frank declared, quote, "I want to proclaim in Canada that the recession is officially over," unquote. Then why are workers not receiving their wage increases? We must get off our butts and really do something about a government that is so dishonest, hypocritical, and contemptuous too, as Frank McKenna said in '87, New Brunswick's most valuable asset, its decent and hard-working people. We, the workers. There are really only two powers we have as union members when a government has gone this far. Through strength, we can take job action up to a general strike to get the government to treat us with honesty, integrity, and respect by honoring signed contracts. Or we can collectively get involved with the political process to replace a government which is dishonest and arrogant to us. For as we said at the beginning, only through the collective bargaining process and our contracts are we able to provide a decent living for our families. The McKenna government has undermined and is destroying the collective bargaining process. If we do not take collective action now and the McKenna government is returned with a majority, it will be understood by King Frank that it is politically smart to break signed contracts, take your negotiated wage increases, and spend them on political projects and grants, loans to his friends. Alan Marr has publicly stated they would not hesitate to break signed contracts again. Let there be no misunderstanding. If the McKenna government is re-elected with a majority, all New Brunswick workers will see collective bargaining interfered with, contracts broken, no wage increases, and more taxes. We are at the crossroads. Collective bargaining as we knew it will be destroyed unless we take severe action. Your union will go through the process of negotiations, arrive at a settlement. You may not be happy with everything, but as a package you accept it as allowing your family to hopefully keep up with the high cost of living. Then wham! After it's signed, dishonest Frank refuses to honor it, and you drop further behind. We were taught by our parents to be honest. Live up to your word. We teach our children to be honest. What kind of example is being set when the government will not honor their written word? If we all work hard so King Frank does not return with a majority, we will not have to take job action, including a general strike to restore collective bargaining. We have momentum going against the dishonesty of the McKenna government. We have exposed and educated ourselves and the public to the dishonesty and the hypocrisy contained in Bill 73. Now, what are we going to do about it? We could do nothing and say, let the union handle it. But you must remember what we said at the beginning. The union is you and your fellow members. You vote, not the union. This would ensure the return of a majority Liberal government and more Bill 73s. We could vote for the Tory party, which stands for wage controls like Mulrooney is forcing on the federal workers and like Tory Premier Cameron has forced on the Nova Scotia workers. Let us take a look at what's being said in Nova Scotia.
He then turned around and broke a collective agreement with the teachers of this province.
Two fundamental objections to this budget. One is the fact that it's riddled with double standards. That while you're being faced with broken contracts, they haven't even contemplated the idea of breaking contracts for the high-priced luxury office towers that they rent from their developer friends. The second thing that people object to is the lack of consultation. And it seems to me, friends, that democracy itself is at stake. When you have a government that brings in these kinds of draconian measures, when it takes the view that the collective agreements count for nothing, then it's taking aim at the basic democratic rights of working people.
Contracts should be honored. When you sign a collective agreement, it should be binding on both parties, and it should be maintained. It's the responsibility of the So why should they break contracts with you, the people of the province of Nova Scotia? It's wrong. The commitment that I make to you today is that we will honor collective agreements and defeat this government. Thank you.
As you heard, the Liberal leader of Nova Scotia, Vince McLean, states, quote, "It is wrong not to honor signed contracts, and the Tory government that did that should be defeated," unquote. We cannot be fooled by the New Brunswick Tories. When they were in power, they passed back-to-work legislation on the school board workers and forced 0% wage restraint on provincial union members. During question period in the legislature, the Tories never asked one question, nor made any presentation to the government against Bill 73. We could vote for the Core Party, whose leader stated the McKenna budget with Bill 73 was a good budget, but did not go far enough. Realizing that Core stands for the elimination of government worker jobs and contracting out jobs to private money-hungry contractors, we can understand what did not go far enough meant. During question period in the legislature on Bill 73, Arch Pafford, leader of the Core Party, never said one word against Bill 73, and the only question he asked during the most harmful legislation being passed was, quote, "Where's the Canadian flag? There is no Canadian flag in the legislature," unquote. It is obvious Core is a one-issue party, and that issue is not the rights of unionized workers or the integrity of collective bargaining. We could vote NDP, like the workers in the largest province in Canada did during the last election. Premier McKenna stated on April 17th,
"I know that these people are frustrated and angry, and I know that the NDP will capitalize on that. But the public of New Brunswick will ask themselves, what would the NDP do?"
Premier Bob Rae had the same choice to make as Premier McKenna. The choice was whether to place the deficit problem on the backs of workers and break signed contracts, or make the banks and large corporations pay their fair share. Here is what the Ontario government did.
I welcome the chance to talk to you about what's happening with Bill 73 in New Brunswick and the McKenna government's attempt to destroy free collective bargaining. and especially to contrast that with what's happening with public employees in Ontario. In the last provincial election, working people in Ontario decided they were going to elect a government for a change that they knew would stand up for them, that would defend their interests. And they did. And when the NDP government brought in its first budget, Bob Rae had a choice, just like Frank McKenna did, but he made different choices. Unlike Frank McKenna, the Ontario NDP decided not to break signed legal contracts. They decided very consciously that they were not going to fight this recession on the backs of working people. They weren't going to scapegoat public employees or destroy public services. In fact, they decided that what they were going to do was to stimulate the economy and to create jobs and to fight the recession that way. I'm sure you in New Brunswick also realize how important it is to have a government that represents the interests of working people. It's about your futures. It's about your incomes, your standard of living, the future of your family, the future of public services, the future of free collective bargaining. Who you elect is going to make a big difference in your lives. And certainly public employees across the country are going to be watching very, very closely. We wish you the best of luck in your fight against McKenna's government in the next election, and we're with you all the way.
When I spoke to New Brunswick Federation of Labour Convention last year, I talked about the Tory business agenda that was reshaping Canada. And I mentioned the fact that a number of provincial governments are now following that agenda, including, of course, Frank McKenna in New Brunswick, where by example of ripping up collective agreements of public sector workers is trying to make public sector employees the scapegoats for the ills of the country. The one place that hasn't happened in Canada has been Ontario, because last year we elected a new Democratic Party government, and it really has made a difference. It's made a difference in terms of public sector bargaining in Ontario. It's made a difference in health and safety legislation. It's making a difference in workers' compensation, making a difference in social legislation, and a whole different attitude in terms of how we relate to each other here. New Brunswickers, of course, will have an opportunity to do something about Frank McKenna later this year. And all I can say to people is, if you look at the Ontario example, who you elect to the legislature really does make a difference. And so I hope as you think about this that you'll get in behind the new Democratic Party and elect working people to legislature, and stop the Frank McKennas and the Brian Mulrooney's from trying to implement totally the corporate business agenda across this country.
Can't you see I'm working? I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Well, they're coming from above me and they're coming from below. Yeah, they're in there right behind me everywhere that I go. And my buddy, he's screaming down the telephone line. He said, give me, say I ain't got the time. Oh no, can't you see I'm working on it?
It's too bad Premier McKenna did not have the same courage, but it seems grants, loans, tax breaks, and bonuses to large corporations are his choice. In Ontario, the bankers are upset and are demonstrating on the streets. Here in New Brunswick, workers are demonstrating on the streets. In Ontario, the big business newspapers are attacking the NDP government for their stand with the workers. Surely this should mean something to us. No political party will ever be 100% acceptable on all issues, but on this issue of honoring signed contracts and not placing the economic burden on the backs of unionized workers, the record speaks for itself. If you truly understand and value the fact that collective bargaining and your contract is what provides you and your family with income for food, clothing, mortgage, rent payments, education for your children, and other basic needs, then you will realize that we must ensure the McKenna government does not return with a majority. If you vote Tory, another member votes CORE, and another votes NDP, our votes will be divided so badly the Liberal will win even though they do not have a majority. The slogan, "Together we stand, divided we fall," has no greater meaning than with the votes in this election. For once, and in the name of free collective bargaining, it is important that we vote together for the party that best represents our number one concern at this time. Our sincere concern that contracts be honored and collective bargaining not be interfered with has to be our main concern if we are to keep up with the high cost of living and onslaught of taxes. We can no longer afford to let long traditional bias politics, my grandfather and father voted whatever, so I'll vote the same. We cannot afford to be tempted to vote a one-issue party, which is really anti-union. We can no longer afford to vote for a candidate because he or she is nice, or they say and promise nice things, because it does not matter what they think when they get to Fredericton. They will do what King Frank or their leader tells them to do. This is an election of survival. Survival of collective bargaining, and our only way of ensuring a decent standard of living for our families. The record is clear. It speaks for itself. Of our choices, one party has demonstrated that given the chance, they will not put the economic burdens on the backs of the workers. They will not break signed contracts. They will act in a manner that has the bankers demonstrating, not the workers. Let this election see our vote put for free collective bargaining and honoring contracts. Let's give a show of support to what the NDP did in Ontario and what they can do in New Brunswick given a chance. The local candidate is a non-issue. They are only as good as the party policy. Together, our vote for NDP policy can topple King Frank from his throne. We are asking each executive to make sure materials are distributed, phone committees are activated, and all members get out to vote the smirk off Frankie's face. Let's do it. You, me, and the NDP.
And the people's strength of one, but the